That's right. We didn't say anything, man.
Such a pussy, Jordan. I hope it was hot for that.
It was.
Good.
Hey, good evening. Welcome to the Stokastic.com NFL Live Before Lock, Barn Burner Edition. Denver Broncos, New Orleans Saints. This is Thursday night football from like 2 years ago. You remember when, actually last year would be a good example too, because they thought Aaron Rodgers would be healthy. So Zach Wilson got like 5 starts. But you remember 2 years ago where the Russell Wilson hype was big and he was just terrible. So then Denver was on like 5 Thursday night. I swear every Thursday night game 2 years ago was terrible, but we had just as much fun talking about it and sweating DFS. So it doesn't matter. The great thing for us, Greg Ehrenberg, by the way, is it doesn't actually matter who plays. To me, it means nothing.
It'll be easy to make unique lineups today. There'll be a lot of unduped lineups to build. They'll leave a bunch of salary on the table. So yeah, I mean, like it's certainly a different one to be talking about. Like if anybody is, unless you're Matt Gajewski, if you tell me you have heard of all of these players in this game before the season started, like, and you know, some of these guys, like, you know, Bub Means came on our radar last week. Mason Tipton, I think he had a big play like a couple of weeks ago. I'm calling bullshit if anybody says they knew all of the players in this game at the start of the season, though.
Gajewski definitely did.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's what I said. He's the exception.
Yeah.
He's the
exception. No, and he knows where they went to college. If Sean V was still with us, he'd know where they went to high school.
Yeah. Well, one of them's got like the same last name as him. So
you're right.
Yeah. So he's probably related to that guy. But yeah, Gajewski knows these players' parents. He knows the mom's maiden name. There's no information that Gajewski doesn't know about any individual football players. But yeah, I mean, you see it in chat right here. Ron Martinez says these are AI creative player names. Yeah, they certainly are. When you go look at the players and it's like, hey, I've got a good amount of exposure to Bub Means and Mason Tipton.
How bad is Equanimous St. Brown that he was the one on the practice squad?
I mean, if he can't make one of these teams, well,
they brought him up just because they lost Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave. But yeah, it's not pretty at all. But again, it doesn't matter. When I say this, believe me, when I say that it's an ugly game, it doesn't mean I won't watch every second of it. You know, doesn't mean I won't wake up tomorrow morning at 6 regretting decisions from the previous night. It's going to happen. It always does. Hopefully things go well for us, man. But there are a million different ways this slate could go. And here's the funny thing. Not a single one of them would surprise me. Like if it turns out you need Bub Means or Lucas Krull or Kendre Miller today, I'd go, yeah, I guess, yeah, it makes sense a little bit. Or if it turns out that you needed captain defense with both kickers and the other defense at flex and no quarterbacks, I'd say, yeah, well, yeah, that kind of makes sense.
The only thing that would really surprise me is if this game is like a 40-35 game. That would be really surprising me because I think these teams both are really going to want to slow the pace down, and the Broncos as well with Bo Nix, who hasn't really shown the ability to throw the football. Good legs, and he is somebody who's been a fantasy asset this year. I don't know how much you watched of the Saints game last week, but I actually thought Spencer Rattler looked like fairly decent relative to expectations. He was viable in DFS at the min price, but yeah, I would be surprised if there's a shootout. Any other situation wouldn't surprise me though.
Yeah, shootout would definitely surprise me here because yeah, and look, it's not just that the Saints are missing key offensive starter skill players and Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave. They have injuries across the board, man. You know, they're missing key offensive linemen, starting center, backup center, starting right guard. Taysom Hill's also out, which is not, I mean, it's kind of a big deal when you consider what he's capable of doing. They're struggling to run the football, which really is their bread and butter, especially if Derek Carr's out. And Denver's defense under Vance Joseph has been good. They don't have Patrick Surtain today, though, which is interesting. I don't think it even matters, if we're being completely honest.
Yeah, what do you need? Patrick Surtain? Like, who would Patrick? Here's actually what would be funny.
I know.
We get this question. If Patrick Surtain, and this is like a hypothetical on top of hypothetical, so it really doesn't matter. The funniest question we possibly would have gotten, though, if Patrick Surtain was playing is, who is Patrick Surtain going to shadow? And then it would be like, how do you even make that decision?
Right. Well, because he wouldn't. He wouldn't. There's a 0% chance that they'd have him shadowing Bub Means today.
Can't have Mason Tipton going nuts tonight.
Right. They would just never. Yeah, right. Guys, if we take Mason Tipton out of the game, we have a real chance. It's crazy. Anyway, happy to have you guys with us. Hey, if you don't mind, take a single second this wonderful Thursday evening, atone for your sins, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and I'd say leave a comment down below. But with these shows, the Live Before Locks, the moment they're over, they're gone. I mean, my God, how many shows do we have that have been watched for a single hour at the same time, never to be heard from again? Tens of thousands.
It's a lot. I mean, we could probably look it up in the YouTube analytics, but yeah, it's a lot of them. It's a lot of them.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Hey, we had some super chats we'll kick it off with, and then we'll get straight into the analysis. But glad you guys could join us tonight, as always. Thanks for making Stokastic your destination for daily fantasy sports. Chris Williams, here it comes. Drum roll, please. Atone, folks. Bring yourself some good karma. Hit that like button. Chris must really think this brings him good luck, too, and I appreciate it, Chris. Also gifted 5 subs or 5 memberships to the YouTube channel. And Philanthropy, thank you, sir. I'm 10 points off first for 10K in a DK, okay, Monday night through Thursday night football slate with 2 players to go. I can't afford Kamara. Who should I go with? I'm leaning Williams and Vic. Be more specific, and Jordan will figure this out. Like, you have 2 players to go, but it's Monday through Thursday. It has to be is it flex and running back? Is it running back and wide receiver?
And how much salary do you have to use?
Exactly. How much salary do you have left? You'd have to specify, because it'd be really tough question to answer.
Yeah, and then also you don't have to leave us another super chat. Just throw the follow-up into the YouTube chat, and we'll get our crack reporter Jordan Klein on it to gather up the information, and then he'll report back to us. But yeah, just throw it into YouTube chat. And also what site you're playing on. Oh, you said DK. Never mind. So that's covered. But yeah, just let us know what positions you've left, how much salary is remaining, and then we'll go look. Also, do we have the pricing up anywhere for that slate?
I don't know.
Well, that's going to be another problem. I don't even know if we have the pricing on hand, but I'll look it up. I'll go.
Poma asked who plays Monday through Thursday. Well, the Monday's over. So the Monday's over.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. You ready?
Yeah. I'm just looking up the pricing for that slate so that when he gets back to us, I have it handy.
The true answer, the honest answer, is nobody's ready for this.
Yeah, that's true too.
So let's do it. All right. Kendre Miller's active. And then Aldrich Estime is another guy. It's like, what type of work is he going to get today? I gave him a little tiny boost in the Sims and got quite a bit. So I brought him back down, Greg, but I'm getting to, yeah, I have 20% right now. I might leave it. I might honestly leave it and just take a wild shot on a slate like this where there's so much value and so much uncertainty. It's a lot.
Like if he ends up scoring a touch, I mean, honestly, if he scores 1 touchdown, that could possibly be enough. If he's the guy who ends up getting goal line touches, it's not like, also, if you look at Estimate, it's not like anybody should say to you, you're crazy. How are you playing him over Troy Franklin or like some other cheap player? And the salary, like, I know a lot of my top lineups because I just uploaded them, looking at them through the Sims. Like my 5th highest projected lineup by Sim ROI leaves $2,300 in salary on the table. I've got multiple top lineups that are leaving $1,000, $2,000 plus in salary on the table. It's not that crazy for him to outscore the guys who are more popular, that are, like Mason Tipton or whoever else it may be. That's like 2,000 or 1,600. So I don't think it's like a crazy stand stake. It's not one that I have in my lineups, but it's not, I wouldn't tell you can't do it.
Yeah, for sure. And really it's just a play on, does Javonte Williams lose work? Does his role start declining after last week with the fumble, the drop pass? But not only that, the fact that he has struggled all season long, and estimate, a true Sean Payton guy, that he brought him in. I don't know. I really don't. I don't have any clue. But I also think when you're looking at him, and it kind of sucks here too, because at minimum salary, what difference does it really make? Like on another slate, he might look fantastic just because who else actually matters down at the bottom. But that's why I don't want to have my night contingent upon, or depending upon whether or not he's good or not. But that's not the case right now. Getting over the field for sure. But the other value, your other value on the slate is who, right? It's okay. Bub Means, Mason Tipton, Devon Vele, who's not even that cheap, Marvin Mims, Lucas Kroll. Troy Franklin, Cedric Wilson. You couldn't with a straight face tell me that there's one of those guys that you have supreme confidence in.
No, I don't have, let's see. So of the cheap guys, the one I have the most exposure to is Bub Means, but I'm at 31% on him. Like there isn't any, to your point, it's not like I'm looking at any of these cheap guys being like, oh my God, Mason Tipton has to make or break my lineups or anything like that. I'd rather just spread out with some of these cheap guys and we'll go over which ones were overweights to the field to, which ones were underweights to the field to. But yeah, I don't want to be in a scenario where it's like, oh, I've got this guy I've never heard of as of 2 weeks ago in 60% of my lineups or anything.
Exactly. Somebody said Mims is out. You mean Jordan Mims? Because Jordan Mims isn't active. I didn't see anything that showed Marvin Mims was inactive. Jordan Mims is definitely inactive though, because they're not carrying 4 running backs tonight. But no, Marcus Mims is not inactive unless you were responding to somebody else in the chat. Greg Dulcich is inactive again. So honestly, Lucas Kroll's one of the guys that actually intrigues me, Greg, because last week, how about this? This guy played 60% of snaps. He ran routes on, okay, so how many dropbacks? Bo Nix had 40 dropbacks. Lucas Kroll ran 30 routes. I mean, it's not exciting by any stretch of the imagination, but they're not using Adam Troutman. Greg Dulcich isn't even active. Maybe Lucas Kroll at that price point actually ends up being one of those guys that we want to get to.
Yeah, I have him. He's not one of the guys that I have much exposure to. I have him in 8% of lineups, which is around where the field is expected to play him. So he's not like my favorite cheap guy on the slate, but he's reasonable to be one of the guys that you throw into your player pool. If he was popular at all, I wouldn't want to have him in any lineups, but him being single digit owned, he's one of the dart throws that makes sense for the day.
How do you prioritize the dart throws though? Like, I'm not asking you to go straight down the list, but are there guys that stand out to you over the others?
Yeah. So for me, it's going to be the guys that we've actually seen get work up until this point. And the 2 cheap guys that fit that criteria the best to me. And once again, this is like very loose who's actually played for the Saints to this point, but it's Bub Means and Mason Tipton. Relative to ownership, the one I liked the most actually is Tipton. It's for a couple of reasons. First off, he is, of the players that have actually been playing that's cheap, he's only pulling ownership in the team. So he's not all that popular. Another part of this too is that when we have seen him on the field, he's actually gotten targets downfield. So if Mason Tipton is to catch passes, I think they're probably going to be more valuable points per reception sort of scenario than compared to say like a Troy Franklin or something like that. Because Mason Tipton, we've actually seen get attempts down the field where if he just catches one of those passes, it could be like a 40 or 50-yard touchdown pass. He's clearly not Shaheed or anything like that, but he's the guy that I think is the upside replacement for Shaheed.
I agree. Also, you have to factor Cedric Wilson into this as well, because it's probably like they only have 4 active receivers tonight, right? 4 active receivers. And that's what they had been. No, that's not true. They had 1, 2, 3, 4, I guess 5 before. But they only elevated Equanimous St. Brown. He's the only other one. And I can't imagine he plays any more than like 10% of snaps. They play a lot of 3 receiver sets. So I think it's likely that you're probably going to just see a lot of all 3 of those guys, Wilson, Means, and Means and Tipton. You don't have to be excited about them, but they're going to be on the field, and that's what it comes down to. At Tipton's price, you're right. It's pretty obvious that he makes for pretty good value there, for sure.
The other thing that I think is probably pretty likely to happen, there's not that much we could do with this information for DFS because he's going to be insanely popular for this slate, but reasonably so. We haven't really seen like the crazy high target Alvin Kamara games this year. We've seen substantial target games. I mean, the last 3 games, he had 8 targets last week against the Bucs. He had 8 targets the week before against the Chiefs. Then against the Falcons, he had 9 targets. But remember, we've seen games from Alvin Kamara where he'll get like 12, 13, 14 targets. That might be how they go about with their offense too. Just be like, let's just get the ball to Alvin Kamara as often as possible. This is a Saints team that was actually really good to start the year. I'm a little bitter about this, Luffy, because it's a team I had a lot of futures action on. I felt so good about the Saints after 2 weeks. I'd bet them at big plus money to make the playoffs. I had bet them even like 100 to 1 to win the Super Bowl. And I'm feeling really good about myself. There were 2.5 games. They're playing your Eagles week 3, and they were looking pretty good at halftime. And then they had the terrible loss to the Eagles that they lose on the final drive. They have the loss against the Falcons because Younghoe Koo makes a 58-yard field goal as time expires, and then just the entire team gets hurt. Now they don't really have players who are reliable to lean on. We did see 2 games last year where Alvin Kamara had 14 targets. I think that's in the cards for today. So Alvin Kamara is going to be popular, and I think it's warranted chalk. It's pretty easy to still make contrarian lineups with Alvin Kamara. They just leave a bunch of salary on the table. But, I mean, if you don't play Alvin Kamara, it's leaving a bunch of salary on the table, too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Look, everything you said is spot on. By the way, I was wrong. I just checked the depth chart. They elevated Jermaine Jackson, too.
Okay, so what? So 5 active?
5, yeah. I don't know exactly what that means. In the sense, like, if they're going to use ESB or if they're going to use Jermaine Jackson, but he is, in fact, on the active roster tonight and is active. So, yeah, we'll see. How much exposure are you getting to a Kamara captain then?
Oh, a lot. All right, so got my
50%?
lineups uploaded, good to go. I've got Kamara. I actually have Kamara overall in 98.7% of lineups. So that is 50% of him in the flex and 48.7% in the captain.
Okay. How much Kendre Miller do you have?
None. I know he's going to be active and maybe he gets on the field and gets a touch or 2. Dennis Miller seems to hate him though. Like
Allen.
Even, what did I say?
Sorry, Dennis Allen. But yes, he does seem to hate him.
In the preseason, he has a hamstring injury, and what ends up happening is there's a press conference, and Dennis Allen goes out and he says, "Oh, well, if this guy wants to make the roster, he has to stay healthy." But he also says that after he already got hurt, and it's like, boy, this is not looking good for Miller. Then even last week, they activate him off the IR, but they make him inactive. So it's hard to have any kind of confidence that Miller ends up playing a significant role. Maybe he steps on the field, and I know that he is somebody who has big play upside, but it's not a button I'm really willing to click in DFS, even with all these other like nonsense players that we're going to be rostering today. They seem to hate Kendre Miller so much that I just can't see them being like, this is the time to break him out.
He's not a fan. I'm not sure what it is. I don't know. I don't know if he thinks his work ethic sucks or what it may be, but I remember him saying that as well. Basically, like, this dude has to stay. Asked him questions and he basically saying, what do you want me to do? The guy's never healthy. It's essentially what he was saying. I do wonder though, because Jamal Williams is basically like playing his way out of this backfield. Mims, running back Mims, not Marvin Mims, wide receiver for Denver. Mims is inactive. So, okay, what if on a short week, Kendre Miller does get worked in? But then on the other hand, I'm going, this team lost 4 straight games after coming, and you would know as good as well as anyone, coming super hot out of the gate. Smoke Carolina, smoke Dallas in Dallas. Yet we're finding out now that everybody smokes Dallas in Dallas. But They come out and they just destroy those two teams. Then they drop 12 points against the Eagles, which was the beginning of a 4-game skid. This is this is legitimately a must-win game for them right now. You know, you're in a division now that has an upstart Atlanta team, a Bucs team that's playing fantastic football. You go 2-5, it's a wrap. They need to win this game. And I know they don't have Derek Carr, Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Taysom Hill, most of the offensive line, or some of it at least. You know, I am hard pressed to think that just because it's a short week, Alvin Kamara doesn't get an insane workload again. Like you have to.
Yeah, that's the way I see it too. And the only way for Miller to play a significant role, it would have to come at the expense of Alvin Kamara. It's not like there's going to be a bunch of plays where they're sharing the field together. And it seems unlikely to me that with the Saints being 2-4, like you mentioned, that they're going to say, let's get away from Alvin Kamara and let's dust off this guy we hate and have him save our season.
Right now, Kendre Miller has a 8.5-yard rushing prop. Where would you go?
I would go over. Here's the reason why. I had a bet for the last primetime game. It was ill-advised. It was based on that report that Frank Gore Jr. was going to be the backup running back. Didn't end up being the case. Bet didn't lose.
No, Ray Davis smoked that Jets team.
But the bet didn't lose. It voided. The reason it voided is because he didn't end up playing. He didn't step on the field. If Kendre Miller actually plays, this is a very, very low prop to clear, 8.5 rushing yards. The most likely way he would go under that is if he's active but just doesn't step on the field. And in that case, it voids anyway. So with that being
you have a blind spot here, though. If Dennis Allen hates him as much as he does, he'll play him on special teams.
Make him go tackle people.
It happened to me with Blake Corum this year, week 1. I bet the unders everywhere, and I'm like, and it ended up winning because he played on special teams. That's the scary part about those bets.
I don't think they're going to make a running back come on. I mean, maybe if the
dude, I don't
really
know.
Hates them, but
he might be a gunner.
If I'm taking one side, and also I'm not betting it, but if I'm taking one side of the Kendre Miller rushing prop, I would take the over because, like I said, I think the most likely scenario of him going under is him just not getting any snaps, and then it voids anyway.
I get that. Just wait till he's on like the field goal team or something. Like he's just wait till Kendre Miller. Dennis Miller's just gonna stick him in the most insulting spots. We'll see. I don't know, but yeah, I hear you. The idea that he could somehow get on the field on special teams scares me. We'll see.
By the way, we got a follow-up from Philanthropy. I feel bad because he left another super chat. We told him that he didn't have to, but he says he has $10,300 left, defense, wide receiver, and flex to play.
Yeah, how much does he have left?
10,300.
Yeah, we don't have that. The problem is we don't have that pricing, like you said.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what it is, but either way, he doesn't have the salary for Alvin Kamara. So now I think it's really a scenario where we're probably just going to who are the next best projected players. I know that you're not like super high on Javonte Williams, but I don't know that I would want to fade Javonte Williams and go all the way down to like estimate or something. Because then also you don't have that much salary for. Then you have a bunch of leftover salary for wide receiver. I don't know that he should be leaving. Like
I'm not doing that. Showdown's a lot different than a 2-game, really. Also, wait, I should, if in case I was unclear, I guess I mentioned this morning, not right now. I still have a lot of Javonte Williams. It's not that I don't have Javonte Williams. I still have a good amount of Javonte Williams. It's just that I wanted to kind of hedge some of that with Estime because I don't have a ton of faith in this rotation, this backfield rotation.
I've got the pricing here, by the way. So defense, Saints and Broncos are basically the same. Saints are $3,100. Broncos are $3,000. Of the two defenses, I prefer Denver. The main reason is because I think it makes sense for them. It's just also the way they've played this year. They're not going to be taking very many chances downfield. This is going to be a very run-heavy team. And then even when the ball is in Bo Nix's hand, he is apt to run a decent amount. So the defense, it's actually going to have more opportunities to score fantasy points. I think it's probably more likely to be the Broncos against Rattler. We did see Rattler. They were willing to have him throw the football last week. So I slightly prefer the Broncos defense to the Saints defense. Running back, I do think you should be going with Javonte Williams. So that would have us at, let's see, he's 5,500 and the defense is 3,000. So that would be 8,500. And how much salary did he say he has left? So $2,800 for the flex. Let me see if there's any punt plays. Like, is there any cheap tight end? If not, then I guess he can't even go to Javonte Williams. $2,800 at tight end. He could go to Lucas Kroll, and then you get Kroll.
That's what I would do.
Yeah, I just wouldn't feel comfortable going to one of the other running backs, because the next running back up, you'd be talking about like Jaleel McLaughlin, and that's like a 7 fantasy point projection difference between him and Javonte Williams.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I think that's the direction to go. I think you plug in Kroll at the flex, defense, you go Broncos, running back, you go Javonte Williams, a little bit of correlation between the defense and the running back. I think it's how you fill out that lineup, Philanthropy. Good luck.
Makes sense to me. Yeah, good luck. So Kamara right now is far and away the best option, along with Bo Nix. And you know what? It's a tough matchup, but Spencer Rattler too. I don't think you have to kind of put any bias to the side and like, hey, this guy's no good or any of that. It doesn't really matter on this slate. It truly doesn't matter. He's going to have the ball in his hands. He did rush 27 yards on 4 attempts last week. That's not great, but you know, if he's running again, Greg, and gives you 30 rushing yards or something like that, it's not insignificant on this slate at all. It feels like, honestly, every 10-yard play is going to be significant on this slate. Unlike that Falcons Bucks game where Mike Evans had 2 touchdowns and 21 fantasy points and wasn't even in the winning lineups.
Yeah, this isn't going to be another 43-37 overtime game where somebody scores 2 touchdowns. It isn't optimal. In fact, here's how I think it's going to work. Like the same way if you guys play MMA DFS, a lot of these slates work. I think the optimal lineup is just going to be whichever 6 players score the most fantasy points, because I don't think pricing is going to matter for this slate. I think it's just going to be 6 players that score the most fantasy points. That's your optimal lineup. So that's the reason I have Alvin Kamara in basically everything. And it's not a spot I want to get away from. Realistically, I do think for Alvin Kamara to not be in the optimal lineup, I think 6 players would have to outscore him. And I think it's such an unlikely scenario.
Yeah, I mean, I currently have 100% Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, I have 98.7.
Now, 50% of that is at flex, 50% of that is at captain. I honestly don't think I'm going to change it. My second most exposed captain right now is Bo Nix. I don't hate that either. Bo Nix is actually pretty mobile. We've seen Bo Nix run. You know, this might surprise you guys because this is a New Orleans team that just got dog walked by the Bucks last week, but they still have the second best red zone efficiency on defense. Now the trick is just score from 40 yards out, but red zone, they have really been a bunch of like a bend but don't break type of team. In between the 20s, they give up a lot. We saw that against Philly. You know, Philly had 400 something yards against them. They've allowed more yards than any defense in football, though. Than any defense in football. Granted, last week was like 550, but even so, they've allowed a lot of yards. They allowed a ton of yards, 400 plus to Kansas City. Kansas City still didn't have a blowout type game. Philadelphia only put 15 points up. You get where I'm going with this. Denver has the best red zone efficiency on defense this season. So both of these teams, like if this wasn't a slate, this is so weird, but if this were one of those slates where Olave was healthy and Rashid Shaheed was healthy, I think kickers would be some of the most popular options on the entire slate. The entire slate. Because then you take Tipton and Means and Cedric Wilson essentially out of the equation. Your value starts to evaporate. And who looks great? The kickers. But believe it or not, this is one of those slates where you'd think you'd get a lot, but when you actually look at how the slate breaks down, I'm getting fewer kickers tonight than I have, I think, all season.
In turn, though, this is the most defenses that I've gotten of the entire season, and I'm totally cool with that. It is not hard to... Yeah, it is not hard to envision. I have 41%. Let me see. Do I have captain exposure to the defenses? Not really. A couple of lineups, nothing significant. But I have over 40% exposure to the Broncos defense. It's, to me, pretty reasonable. And they're projected to be like somewhat owned, but not like 40% or anything like that. It's not like the defense is one of the most popular projected players position. I don't even know what you call an entire team defense in those terms, but Broncos defense, not massively popular or anything like that. And that is actually the spot that I am most overweight to right now, is the Broncos defense, for them being in north of 40% of lineups.
Me too.
You know, it's funny. I just realized even having nearly 100% of Alvin Kamara, it doesn't really get you that far overweight to Alvin Kamara.
What's his ownership at right now?
What is it, like total? It's like 85% or something.
85%. Okay. Yeah. Well, where else are you going to go?
Yeah, Jordan, pull that up really quick. Yeah, so we've got, we just add these two together, and it is, 89% is the total ownership for Alvin Kamara.
So how about we just fade Alvin Kamara, Greg?
No, thanks. No, thanks. You
No,
can justify on FanDuel not playing him in the MVP. I still think he should be in a flex spot. That to me is like the discussion point on Alvin Kamara is for something like, and I saw there was a super chat about this too. Somebody asked, I think it was Alex Kaiser. He had asked us. Yeah, here it is. Alex Kaiser asked us, for single entry, do we get away from Alvin Kamara at captain? That to me is the discussion point, is do you want to potentially play somebody else in the captain spot? Not do you want to get off Alvin Kamara altogether? For single entry, yeah, I do think it's reasonable to not play Alvin Kamara in that multiplier spot. If I look at my top projected DraftKings lineups by sim ROI, a lot of them don't have Alvin Kamara in the captain spot. He's just in the flex spot. So for single entry, where the fields tend to be a little bit sharper and the ownership is more concentrated, Kamara might be 65 to 70% owned in the captain spot. Yeah, I would like to go to somebody else for single entry in the multiplier.
What would you say for people that are watching this show that hear us talking about fading players and, getting leverage on the field and ownership, because this can be confusing, this stuff. What would you say the greatest difference is between a guy being a good fade, a sharp fade, and a really popular guy just being a bad fade no matter how popular he is?
Yeah, so a lot of it is going to depend, like, what the other options are on the slate, how you could potentially get leverage off of it. So a scenario for it's kind of hard to pick out like a specific scenario for this game just because the players aren't going to be familiar to a lot of people. So I'll use a scenario from a game that might be more reasonable to people to understand how the players correlate with each other. But think like the Minnesota Vikings are playing in a showdown slate and Justin Jefferson is super popular. Then you could get some leverage by playing Aaron Jones in the captain spot. And then if it's Aaron Jones who scores the touchdowns, so that means that Justin Jefferson didn't score those touchdowns, and be getting a little bit of leverage by getting exposure to the run game as opposed to the passing game, which might be more popular. For today, if I'm looking at a way to get leverage instead of Alvin Kamara, maybe it is Spencer Rattler in the multiplier spot. And then you're hoping for Spencer Rattler to throw a touchdown pass to, whoever it ends up catches them. And then there's rushing upside for Spencer Rattler. There's chance that Spencer Rattler, they get to the 1 yard line. Maybe they do a QB sneak with Rattler instead of handing the ball off to Alvin Kamara. I think that's probably my favorite pivot off of Kamara, is going to Rattler instead.
Man, it's going to be crazy when Kamara gets hurt and Kendre Miller is optimal.
It's not going to be, at least it won't be Taysom Hill vulturing him, because how many times has that ruined a showdown slate? That's not going to be the scenario today.
Yeah, that's often a pretty terrible feeling, but it's true. I mean, it makes it a lot more difficult to get away from him when you have spots like that. I think, yeah, really, Bo Nix to me is the best captain not named Alvin Kamara. Who do you think the best captain not named Alvin Kamara is today?
Yeah, so it's going to depend a little bit on the GPP. For single entry, I like Spencer Rattler. If it's outside of single entry and just large field GPPs, then I go Bo Nix, $4,100 in the captain spot over on DraftKings. There's significant rushing upside for Bo Nix, which for a single game slate, I think kind of also gives him a little bit of a sneaky floor in addition to the ceiling that he has. Like there's in my opinion, there's a much greater chance of Spencer Rattler or, any of these wide receivers on either side of the game, putting up a really low fantasy score than Bo Nix. I think Bo Nix has a floor built in considering that rushing ability. So large field GPPs, Bo Nix, single entry. I'm going to say Spencer Rattler as the non-Alvin Kamara guy.
I like that too. The one guy that I've had the most trouble getting to is Cortland Sutton. And
your guy.
What's that?
Your guy, Cortland Sutton.
Yeah, Cortland Sutton was my buy low. Now and don't get me wrong, like right now I have 24% of him. So I guess I'm just slightly below the field. It's not like I don't have a lot, but you would think on a slate like this, where there's not a lot of high priced options, that you'd have a decent amount of all of them, like all four of them. But 10-8 on Cortland Sutton this is going to be the dagger for me. You guys should all load up on Cortland Sutton, because apparently I can never get this guy right. Cortland Sutton's going to end up, I've been betting him the score basically every week until last week. He's going to end up having 2 touchdowns and 100+ yards. It's going to be the remember me game for Cortland Sutton, Greg. And here I'm going to be just like, yep, well, I was too early.
Cortland Sutton. Do I have a significant amount of Cortland Sutton? I don't in the captain spot. In the flex spot, yeah, I don't really have him. This is okay. So of all of the high price guys, Cortland Sutton's actually my favorite fade. He's pretty popular considering that he's 10,800. He's got a quarterback who can't really throw all that well. If I'm trying to prioritize the high price guys to get to, Cortland Sutton's pretty easily my least favorite. It would be different if he was like really low owned, but he isn't.
He's far and away my least favorite. He's very expensive. I thought that he'd be lesser owned because of this price point, but it's just easy to jam him and pair him with Bo Nix.
Well, I think the reason that he is as popular as he is because a lot of people are just finding it very simple to just build lineups and pay up for everybody. And then you just give a couple, and then you just throw a couple of punts there. Deegs in the chat said that we have him at 33%. What do you mean he's popular? 33% is still like, for a Cortland Sutton being 10,800, I consider that to be pretty popular.
I do too. I said if Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed were healthy today, Cortland Sutton would be like $8,500.
Yeah, probably something like that.
There's no way he'd be close to this price point. It's just not a chance in hell.
Yeah, Jeremy Savage said the best receiver on the slate is your least favorite. Yeah, so we've got 4 players I'd call spend up options, right? Like, let me look at the salary and make sure I'm not skipping anybody. But yeah, so these 4 players are the spend up options: Alvin Kamara, Cortland Sutton, Bo Nix, Spencer Rattler. Of those 4, Cortland Sutton is pretty clearly my least favorite.
God, all of this talk about Cortland, it's inevitable. I'm telling you, it's inevitable. And I've always been a Cortland Sutton defender, but this is also okay. Just to put things in context, this is when he's $5,000 going up against, going up against the Raiders or something like that, and he's 0%. He's like 1% owned. It's just way different looking at this slate. You could say he's the best receiver, which is true, because he's arguably the only receiver on this slate, but he's expensive. Yeah. Of those 4, you're right. Who would you put if you included Javonte Williams in the equation? I assume you still have a lot more Javonte than you have Cortland Sutton.
Yeah. By the way, the gap in salaries is hilarious because it goes from Javonte Williams all the way down to Juwan Johnson. I don't remember there being there's always a gap between where there's like the backup quarterbacks and everybody else. It's not often that the salary goes from $8,800 all the way down to $6,800 though. So that's another reason too that Javonte Williams shows up in lineups, is because if you have that amount of salary left over, you either go into Javonte Williams or all the way down to Juwan Johnson. So just kind of like by default, Javonte Williams lands in lineups.
Yeah, I've got a decent amount too. Like I said, I jammed a little bit of Estime just in case I end up being right. If I'm not right, I can live with that. Still could be live with a lot of these lineups. By the way, guys, we got some good stuff to get into in a few minutes here. Still plenty of time. 2,000 of you watching with us. Appreciate you being here. Greg, I'd say we have some awesome stuff on tap right now for anybody watching. So listen, perk those ears up. You're going to want to hear this. First off, you want to get NBA Core, $100 value for well, the monthly is, but Core for $1 through how many slates is it for $1?
Yeah, so you are going to be getting our NBA package through October 29th. And it doesn't matter if you sign up today, it doesn't matter if you sign up tomorrow or Monday, it's going to cover you through October 29th. So you don't need to wait to sign up, just to make it as simple as possible for people to get exposure to our NBA tools. And also everything's going to be up on the site before the weekend. So the idea here also is that if you guys want to play around with the tools, you want to see how the sims work if you haven't used them before, maybe you have questions for me, I'll be hanging out in Discord, which I'm always around in Discord, but especially once NBA season starts, I'm going to have dedicated hours to Discord, which comes with any single subscription package we have. So $1, and no matter which day you sign up, it's not like 4 days, 5 days, 7 days. Whichever day you sign up, you're going to get access to our NBA Core package through October 29th for just $1. Link is down below in the YouTube description box. The promo code is TIPOFF24, but you don't even have to remember. Just click on the link down below, and that is going to get you access to our player projections, our ownership projections, our sims, our new single lineup simulator, which we're going to have for NBA, which we've had for football as well this year. You get all of that just for $1 to try out our tools for the first handful of slates this season.
Also, if you're going to do it, so is all of our data updated for the first game?
Not yet, but it will be before the weekend.
Before the weekend. All right.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is you sign up now, you get the $1 for all of those days. And then what happens is now you can familiarize yourself with all of the tools and get a head start on everything. Also,
yeah, exactly. And if you are playing around with it and you have any questions, it's one of the other reasons too that we just wanted to allow people to get in early is, like I said, if you're playing around with it, you don't understand something, just hit me up in Discord and I'll get back to you. And then also I'm going to be doing office hours, kind of like you guys are familiar with what Steve Buzzard does. He does once a week on Thursdays. He answers questions for an hour. I'm going to be doing that Monday through Friday, every single weekday this year for an hour. I think I'm going to do it 1:30 to 2:30 p.m. Eastern time, because that'll be right after injury reports come out. So we could talk about that specific slate. We could talk about general strategy, questions about the tools. So that's something else that comes with access to any of our packages. You get Discord, and I'll be in Discord every day.
Or if you would prefer to just get all of the tools for free for the entire month, or actually for 5 months if you want, click that first link in the description. Sign up on any of these sports books or any of these pick'em sites by clicking that claim offer. Literally deposit their minimum, bet it, and after that bet settles, email us at support@stokastic.com and get a free month of any sport you want. If you went in there, Jordan, go to the website. If you go in or to the landing page and you said, I'm going to claim offer, click that on Bet365. Oh, I'm not on and by the way, $200 in bonus bets with Bet365. I'm not on Caesars yet. I'll do that. And I'm not on BetMGM yet either. Now you do that, make the minimum deposit on all of them, which is like $10, $5 or $10. And now you've got 3 full months. So it could be 2 months of NFL and you want a month of NBA. Straight no-brainer. That's $100 per month stacked on top of the bonus bets and all of the sign-up offers you're getting. And if you're in non-legal betting states, all of the pick'em sites here are included. The only thing that's required is that you use the claim offer link on that page, and you've got a free month or 6 if you want to sign up on all of these of any core package you want for any sport, and they stack month over month. Link in the description and in the chat. If you have questions, like Greg said, always hit us up. We're happy to answer them on Twitter as well. Dude, it's the best offer we've ever done, hands down, without question. Just follow those steps, email us, and you are in. 21 years or older to gamble. You have a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. What are you doing with FanDuel today? A lot of questions in chat about it, but this is kind of one of those slates where, yeah, the obvious answer is Kamara at captain or Knicks at captain. What is the strategy for FanDuel today with a wildly different format than DraftKings and no 1x multiplier on salary in the top spot?
There's only 3 players I get exposure to in the multiplier spot on FanDuel. It's Bo Nix, it's Spencer Rattler, it's Alvin Kamara. I'm going to say this. If you guys play Kamara at the MVP spot on FanDuel, and by the way, Kamara's in all of my FanDuel lineups that I built, but He's not my most rostered MVP. Actually, more exposure both Bo Nix and Spencer Rattler in the MVP spot. They're each projected for around 10% ownership in that MVP spot. So I do think that there's not like a super high chance, but there's at least a reasonable chance that you could see Bo Nix or Spencer. Oh, by the way, I think I misspoke. Spencer Rattler's right around 10% owned. Bo Nix is just over 20% owned. But I would like to get some of the ownership discount by getting Bo Nix or Spencer Rattler in that multiplier spot. Relative to ownership, Rattler is my favorite there. If you are going to play Alvin Kamara in the MVP spot, which obviously is reasonable, I'm underweight to the field on him, but it's not like I have none of. It's not like I'm off of Alvin Kamara in the MVP spot. You have to leave significant salary on the table to play a reasonable Alvin Kamara lineup. If you don't do that, if you play Kamara at MVP and you use all of the salary, you are guaranteed to have a lineup that is going to be duped tons of times. The lineup that is going to be, this is another question we typically get. Lineup that's expected to be duped the most on FanDuel, and I think this is the most duped lineup I've seen on any FanDuel Showdown slate this season. It is Alvin Kamara, Bo Nix, both of the defenses, and Javonte Williams. I've got that expected to be duped in the sim run I did a ton of times. So that lineup is going to be really popular, and then there's a bunch of other Alvin Kamara lineups as well that use all the salary that look like they're expected to be duped a few hundred times each. If you're going to play Alvin Kamara, leave at least $1,000 in salary on the table, but probably $1,500 or more.
That's crazy. It's just it's an oddball slate. And we haven't even talked about Jaleel McLaughlin yet. He's a guy that earlier in the day I was getting more of, but I'm just getting less of him. You have his prop coming down, Audric Estime's prop coming up. Williams has pretty much stayed where it was. I don't have a ton, and I'm talking rushing props here and rushing plus receiving. I have a lot less Jaleel McLaughlin than I thought I would, but it actually does make sense when you consider he's 5,800. He's in an odd spot. Another guy that we didn't talk about a lot, who I mentioned to Matt this morning on the strategy show, 10 a.m. Eastern every Monday and Thursday, by the way. Check that out. You'll enjoy it. If not just for Gajeski's, dude, he's been getting so fired up lately. It's great. Someone asked a question in chat today and he just excoriated them. But
somebody must be putting a little bit of something extra in his whey protein powder.
I know. This person deserved it though. It was one of those things where it's like, well, yeah, you said this about this guy. Watch, he just goes off tonight. And it's like, yeah, you could say that about anybody. We're only giving you the analysis and the information that we have. This could happen any given week that someone just kind of pops off with a big play and it's like, oh yeah, and then they come chirping. It happens. But Matt's been great this season. I don't know what's gotten into him, but he has been fun. Anyway, the other guy I mentioned was Juwan Johnson. And you would think that he would be in a great spot. Here's the concern. They priced him up to the point where now he's kind of in that dead zone, that no man's land, where if you want to play him, it's fine. You absolutely can at that salary. I've been seeing these trends. Juwan Johnson has scored in each of his last 2 Thursday night football games. All right, great. He's no Byron Pringle. But you're still paying a lot of money for a guy that, what are you projecting him for? 3.5 targets in a game like this?
Yeah, I mean, we've got him projected for like 7 fantasy points.
Right.
So when you look at him at $6,800, like we've got a lot, both the defenses are, well, the Saints defense projects comparably to him. The Broncos defense projects better. Bub Means projects better than him. Vele projects better than him. So there are a handful of guys, actually almost all of the players who are priced right underneath Juwan Johnson project better than him. And by those reasons, when I run anything through the Sims, I don't get very much of Juwan Johnson. I only have 8% of him. So he's somebody who looks like I'm going to be pretty far underweight to the field too. And same goes for Jaleel McLaughlin in the same price point. He's projected for ownership in the teams. I only have 6% of him. We've just got guys in the 4K range that project, or the defense is projecting better than some of these skill position guys in the mid range.
That's the issue for sure. Jeremy said, schematic wise, this is a terrible matchup for Kamara, but you're just playing him for the raw points tonight. Honestly, Jeremy, I couldn't agree more with you. Like I have a lot of respect for Vance Joseph. I have a lot of respect for this Denver defense, even without Surtain. Their defensive line has outplayed expectations dramatically, right? They tackle well. They've played well. across the board, they've been very good. I mean, if the game plan coming into this is it like, all right, let's just stop Alvin Kamara, then what is it, right? What is it? But does it actually matter? I'm not sure and Jeremy, I understand, by the way, that's what you're saying as well. And I'm in full agreement. I don't know if it matters. Like even a 13 or a 12 from Alvin Kamara today might be enough. Plus, another thing, if you don't play, Greg, if you don't play Kamara, and if you guys don't want to play Kamara, don't do it. If it wins, screenshot me because I will be impressed. We will throw this up there next Thursday night and go, this is the Kamara fader.
Make sure if you're not going to play Alvin Kamara, be in the same contest as me. That's also going to be
okay.
If you're not playing Alvin Kamara.
What I was going to say though is that Clint, can we play Riley Moss at captain? The stellar white cornerback for Denver. Channel your inner Shane Gillis on that one. He's watching tonight. No, what I'm saying about somebody like Kamara though is if you don't play Kamara, and you talked about this as leverage and pivots earlier. Who's your pivot? Like, who's the pivot where you go, yeah, I think if I don't play Kamara, this guy gets me enough fantasy points barring a Kamara injury, I should say. Mm-hmm. Who gets enough opportunity, enough volume to be like, that makes sense as the right pivot. This build makes a lot of sense without Kamara. That's why I get so much of him tonight.
Yeah. And like we were talking about before with the pricing on this slate, I think the optimal lineup is going to be the 6 players that score the most fantasy points or the 5 players that score the most fantasy points on FanDuel, just because there are so many readily available players that project almost exactly the same from like 3,000 all the way up to the 50, whatever the price point is on the Broncos defense, which is in that 5K range, so 4,800. So all of those guys being so similar, it's just salary isn't going to come into the mix. So if you aren't going to play Alvin Kamara, I kind of think you're banking on an injury. So maybe that's the lineup that you're going to play Kendre Miller. If you don't have Alvin Kamara, put Miller in that lineup, and then it makes sense from a game theory perspective. There are ways to get different on the slate. You don't have to play Alvin Kamara in the multiplier spot, but I'm playing him in nearly every single one of my lineups today, either in the captain or the flex. 100% of FanDuel lineups, 98.7% of DraftKings lineups. So I'm just going to play Alvin Kamara. He's not the guy that I want to get off of. If I wanted to fade one of the high-priced guys, it's Courtland Sutton.
Yeah, but I will say, you mentioned it, and Eric Ronas mentioned it. He said Miller and hope Kamara gets hurt, LOL. He's not wrong, though. Like, if you are just trying to get insane, if you don't have Alvin Kamara, having Kendre Miller in those lineups makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're playing for an injury,
which happens. It does happen. Now, it's very unlikely that it's going to happen to the point where, like, the problem, I didn't mean to cut you off, Greg, but if Kamara gets hurt in the third quarter, there's a good chance that Kendre Miller still isn't optimal. Not to mention Jamal Williams is still on this offense and he's active tonight. Like, you would need the first quarter Kamara injury plus Kendre Miller being the number one backup and not splitting work with Jamal Williams. Like, you need a lot of things to go right, even if Kamara gets hurt. Oh, and they need to move the football against a good Denver defense.
Yeah, it's why this has not been a popular question for a minute. It used to come up all the time doing Showdown shows a couple of years ago.
Backup quarterback.
Yeah, I cannot remember the last time I've seen a backup quarterback question. I swear, every time I used to do the show, there would be at least 3 people in chat asking if it was a backup quarterback slate. It hasn't come up in forever, but kind of what you mentioned, it's the same reason that I never would recommend playing a backup quarterback, is because there's so many hurdles for them to clear to be in the winning line. Even as simple as this, even if you're playing Miller, you probably need Kamara to get hurt early in the game. Like, it doesn't do you any good if he gets hurt in the fourth quarter.
That's what I said. That's what I'm saying.
Like, it's so many hurdles to clear that I don't really like it as a strategy.
Not everybody can be Marcus Mariota. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Marcus, I remember when Mariota was optimal.
Single shipped the Millie.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, by the way, we had some super chats here. So
hit 'em.
Not for Jason wants to know, who are the cash game locks? Both quarterbacks. Alvin Kamara, obviously. Kamara in the multiplier spot for cash games. So both quarterbacks, Kamara, Javonte Williams, then whichever two cheap options you like the most. I think that's what should be considered the cash game locks. And then we've got Chris Williams says the game is so trash, I'm double gifting to bring myself even more good karma as the game reminds me of the water that you see at the bottom of the dishwasher. All right, well, I get that's a step up from toilet water at least. So another 5 YouTube memberships from Chris Williams. Chris, we appreciate you. And then X Traceless One says Captain Bub means no Sertan equals juicy matchup. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to play one of the cheap wide receivers, Means is my favorite one to play in the multiplier spot. Do you have, Lofty, before we finish here, do you have one of the cheap players that you like above all of the other ones?
Do I have one? How cheap?
We'll say anything. What is anything 4K or below? So that would include Bub Means.
That would include Bub Mean. Okay. Then it would probably be him, if we're being honest. And this is kind of like super basic analysis here, but the reason it would be him is because last week, we saw Tipton 2 games ago against Kansas City. We saw Mason Tipton get a good amount of work, 4 targets, downfield shots that actually should have been caught when Derek Carr was in. Last week, it was Bub Means. Now, how much does that mean? I don't know. But you have a guy in Spencer Rattler who we have a very small sample on. We can't tell much about him. Bub Means played 71% of snaps in that game, where Rashid Shaheed played 81. Chris Olave only played 2 snaps. But Bub Means led the team in snaps outside of Rashid Shaheed, who's not there anymore. So yeah, it would be, and he saw 8 targets in that game. It would be Bub Means for me in this spot. By the way, if you're making last second tweaks, I want to have a time. I have 15% Marvin Mims because he had 3 deep targets last week, all of which were not caught, unsurprisingly. But if Marvin Mims happens to be the guy that catches a deep ball for a 60-yard touchdown and this ends up being a 20-17 game, I want to have a little tiny trace exposure to somebody like that just in case.
Yeah, I like Mason Tipton a little bit more than Marvin Mims. They're comparably priced, but also Mims is less popular. Not that there's like crazy ownership going to Tipton or anything. Like he's still projected for ownership in the teens, but we talked about Tipton at the top of the show, and of the cheap wide receivers, I do think he's the one that has the most upside just because his depth of target has been long so far this year. He's been somebody they've looked downfield for, and it just makes sense with Shaheed being out that Tipton is going to directly step into that role. So I like Tipton, but I mean, like, how could you be ultimately confident in any of these pass catchers?
Great show, man. As always, you guys are the best. Appreciate you watching. We'll see you back here, Greg and myself, as a matter of fact, tomorrow. Tournament strategy show, one of our favorites of the week. You got NBA coming up soon, but football, full swing still. It's never going to die down, not until it's over. So come join us, 10 a.m. Eastern tomorrow. Tournament strategy show. We'll go through the Sims. Even if you're not a sub, this show will be highly valuable for all of us, including the 2 of us on this show right now. Shout out to Jordan for producing. Remember, any of those sports books or pick'em sites with that link gets you a free month or as many months as you want by signing up and stacking as many of those books. And of course, through the 29th of October, you sign up now or you sign up on the 24th, makes no difference. $1 NBA package, every single slate, every single game, core sims, single lineup sims, all that good stuff. Guys, we don't do promos like this often. So if there's ever a time to take advantage, it's at the beginning of a season or when we've got these crazy sports book promos as well. We'll see you back here soon for the next one. Good luck tonight. Even to you, Alvin Kamara faders. Peace. That would kill me. It'd be over for me. Like if Alvin Kamara faders won.
That would be no good for me.